Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm Jen T with ARINGO. I'm so excited to be here and excited to get to know you guys. So as we're waiting for people to join, please say hello on the chat and let me know where you're joining us from today. And while you're doing that, also give us a thumbs up on YouTube and share with your friends if you feel like it's vital information for them for choosing and shortlisting schools for their MBA list for fall 24 or even beyond. And I do think that this could absolutely work for both MBA or master's programs. So it doesn't just have to be for MBAs. So as we wait, my name is Jen Turtschanow and I'm CEO of ARINGO. And so I'm super excited to be here today. Always enjoy being here with my GMAT Club friends. And so all right, I think we're ready to get started. So as I mentioned before, my name is Jen T and I am the CEO of ARINGO. And today we're going to be talking about what I'm titling MBA 101, a strategy guide for shortlisting your programs, which again, I think that this can absolutely be applicable to both your MBA and master's programs. So it's not just for MBAs. All right, so I'm Jen T and I work for ARINGO as the CEO. We are an international company. We started about 20 years ago and we love to help candidates with their applications to top MBA programs and business schools around the world. We help people with deciding what schools or chances estimation, as well as putting your application together, pitching the right short-term and long-term goals that make sense for you, your goals, and to the admissions committee when they're actually reading through your application and saying, this is like an ideal candidate because of X, Y, and Z. We're the ones helping you put those main points together to make sure that you're authentically showing yourself, but also putting yourself in the best light. You can look at our statistics online. We're audited every year. As you can see, our admissions rates are quite a bit higher than the traditional admissions rates for the schools. So you can always check out specific schools on our website at aringo.com, which you can also like and share with your friends. All right, so for today, we're going to start with MBAs and other programs that you can apply to. We're going to get into why MBA, the types of MBAs that are out there, and then we'll talk about shortlisting the programs and the cost and ROI. And so this should help you with putting together your list of schools that you're most interested in and creating this short list. I do see that some questions are coming in. Super excited to answer them. If they're not 100% applicable to where we're at, I'll definitely get to them by the end of the session. But I see that Wisdom wants to know about EMBAs. Or I'm sorry, not about EMBA. Good question. So on the next couple of slides, we're going to definitely talk about who an MBA is geared towards, and then some special senior programs that can help with folks that are maybe over the typical age for an MBA. So first, we'll start with a master's degree versus an MBA. So for master's degrees, they're typically going to be very specific and focused on an industry or a specialization. And you'll want to get a master's if this is where I want to be. So supply chain, logistics, finance, marketing, like if you know this is your area and you're like, this is where I'm going to stay for the rest of my career, a master's degree can help you with having highly specialized information and grow throughout your career through that trajectory up to, the CMO, CFO. You can get to those absolute levels without the MBA with just your master's. But if you're thinking, I want to have a wider scope and I want to be able to influence a business more than just with finance or marketing, or I don't want to just kind of stay in one vertical, then an MBA might be a better option for you, because you're going to have the foundations of business and get to learn a little bit of everything. And then you'll get to do specializations to help you take a deeper dive into specific sectors, usually 2 or 3 of them. So most of the time, a master's degree doesn't require as much work experience. It could be from 0 to 2 years of work experience is absolutely fine for them. For an MBA, they're definitely looking for 2 to 3 years minimum for the MBA program, just so that you have foundational experience to apply to those core classes and you kind of understand how they work between each other. And so that's why you'll see they usually want you to have 2 years of work experience at time of application, 3 years of experience by time you start the program, and then on up beyond that. So next, we'll talk about why you want to get an MBA or even a master's degree. So if you're a career switcher and you're like, I want to move from, being an engineer to working in product, or I want to be in marketing or finance, wherever you're wanting to go, you're a career switcher. Career accelerators are looking to continue to notch up on the ladder, and an MBA or a master's degree can help you get there faster. And then there's also the folks that are thinking, in the either near or far future, I really want to start my own business. And so an MBA is also fantastic for folks that are looking to be an entrepreneur. Or I love this one because some people are looking for taking like a break out of the workforce and maybe refocusing and, trying to find out what they really want to do. And so it's a little bit of me time. All right, so the types of MBA programs, and so Wisdom, I think this is going to be helpful for you. So a traditional full-time MBA program, flagship 2-year program, or for Europe or UK schools, usually 1 or 1.5 years. The full-time MBA program, average age is going to be around 28 years. Again, they're going to be looking for 3 years minimum of work experience. And then beyond that, they're going to also be looking to have some leadership or management or some promotions within your resume. And then the executive MBA is for those who, have, 8 to 10 years of work experience, and it's part-time. So you spend time, working, and then usually it's a weekend or a module where you'll go for a week to go and study the executive MBA, and then come back to work and implement what you've been learning. So typically also looking for you to have more of that managerial work experience and looking to not just move up in management, but also kind of gearing towards that like C-level experience. And then there are these 1-year senior MBA programs that are full-time. And so those are available for candidates that have about 8 to 10 plus years of work experience. They are full-time, typically 1 year. Some candidates will be sponsored when they go into these programs because, that's part of their career trajectory within a specific company. And other people are looking to retool a little bit, or they're working in a family business or their own business, and they're wanting to get to that next step. I would say it's a lower percentage of people that are looking for a job post the 1-year senior MBA programs, but there definitely are a couple of those programs that are definitely specifically for folks that are looking for experience. Some examples of this category, and I'm just going to go through them because it's a little bit more rare, and a lot of people have questions about, like, what if I'm 30 and I want an MBA? Like, what are my options if I want to go full time? So a couple of those would be like Foster Global EMBA, the USC IBEAR program, the MIT Sloan Fellows, LBS Sloan Fellows, as well as the MSX program at Stanford. So those are the primary ones that are offering full-time senior programs. All right, so is it a good idea to do a 1-year full-time MBA with 5 years of experience? Kumar, absolutely. I think 5 years of work experience, full-time MBA is definitely right in your wheelhouse. There are a couple of traditional MBA programs that will have a 1-year option, like Emory, Goizeta, or Kellogg. Then there's tech MBAs as well. That'll also offer that kind of 1-year experience. If you're like, I don't know if I need to take 2 years out, I don't know if I need an internship. There's also that 1-year option, but 5 years is right in the average experience zone, 4 to 6 years right here for traditional full-time MBA. All right, so next let's talk about US versus European schools. So the US schools, a little bit different as far as like names, because it's always like big and famous universities. Typically, they're going to be a bit more slanted to having a higher percentage of Americans in the class. All programs are aiming to have a multicultural class that's diverse, with Americans, but also across the globe, everybody coming from different perspectives and different fields and roles. So then it's 2 years typically with an internship, and so that's the US MBA programs, and we'll go through the top ones, but I mean, like, we're talking about Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, those types of flagship programs that everybody's heard of. When we move to EU or European schools, it's a little bit different because typically they're not as common names, right? Like, my mom would have heard of Harvard Business School, but she would have never heard of INSEAD or maybe even London Business School. But these are the names because typically these schools are just for the business programs, and so they don't have another college or university behind them. It's specifically the business school. So a little bit different as far as brand recognition, but absolutely, if you're in business, everybody knows these names from European and UK schools. Then we also have the traditional Oxford, Cambridge, obviously that also have MBA programs with them. But we'll talk about that list in just a few minutes. And so, these programs are going to be highly international. They're typically going to be 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 years, depending on the program. Some of them may have an internship or internship options or paths. And actually, some of the European schools actually have a fall and a January start. So a couple of different options for you for your pathway. And then really kind of deciding which program is going to be best for you is really, I would say, mostly location, right? Like, where do you want to work when you graduate? Do you want to be in Europe and UK, or do you want to be in the US? Or if you're open for both, then you can absolutely have a mix of schools on your list. All right, so now that we've kind of given some high level background to the different types of programs there are, we can go through what the top programs are and where you can find them. So obviously there's rankings everywhere that you can look at. Most people are looking at the US News and World Report as well as the Financial Times. So those are the two that people pay the most attention to. But like Poets and Quants has their own, QS has their own. So every ranking system has different qualities that they're looking for. Some of them could be, return on investment, the cost of the program, the satisfaction of the alumni, class size, experiences, etc. So, when you're looking at these rankings, make sure that you are kind of considering what the rankings are really based on. So here are some top MBA programs or top business schools within the US. So, obviously the common ones, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, but then we also have, Darden at UVA, we have Yale School of Management, Michigan Ross, NYU Stern, Cornell Johnson, MIT, amazing schools that may or may not be in what some people term as the M7, which is like the miraculous 7. And they can definitely be on your list, but we're going to get into why they should be on your list if they're the right school for you. But yeah, so these are a couple of the top ones. You can definitely look into the rankings and see a lot more schools than the M7, the T10 or T15. Essentially, it's the top 10, top 15, or top 30 MBA programs that a lot of people are kind of gravitating towards. And then when we go to Europe, as I mentioned, London Business School, INSEAD, IESC, HSA or HEC Paris. There's Cambridge Judge Business School, Oxford Said, Sade, Bocconi, like all of these are fantastic programs that you can look into if you're wanting to study in Europe or in the UK. Very amazing schools that are definitely top ranked when you're looking at global programs. All right. So again, we have some basis for understanding MBA programs. Now, how do you start choosing which ones are going to be right for you so you can build a short list? So first, like I said before, is kind of where do you want to be? And that can be like 3 different categories. Where do you want to be in your career? So think about, if you're wanting to be in finance, if you're wanting to be in marketing, supply chain, different schools have different concentrations that will get you to that next step in your career. Some of them are well known for different specializations, and that can definitely help you with getting to the next spot and also being able to leverage not only the curriculum, but also the location. So if you're wanting to be in finance, being in a financial hub like New York or London can be, very fun, like it could be very lucrative for your career, getting you really immersed into that area, building your network, and really getting you to that next level. So the other thing would be, where do you want to live, right? So looking at that location, most of the time when you graduate from an MBA program, most of the graduates are going to probably live very close to the area that their school is in. And that's, where the heavy recruitment is. I would say, like, if you're going to school in the Northeast, you're going to land in the Northeast. So that could include, New York, Boston, and maybe DC, right? Like that kind of area. And then like Chicago, you're going to land kind of in the Midwest to New York, but maybe not all the way to Boston. And then West Coast, they stick a bit more to the West Coast side as far as recruitment and attending schools. There are people that can make, career jumps from one to the other as far as East Coast versus West Coast and be able to, make a career, outside of their like where they went to school. But it's a little less common because people like to build their network and be immersed in that kind of area based on where they went to their MBA program. Same thing will hold true as far as UK and Europe. Typically, if you go to a school in either one of those kind of regions, you will be employed within those regions as well. It is quite hard to make the leap of going to an MBA program in the UK and getting all the way back to the US, or vice versa, going to school in the US and making it to Europe or UK. So, kind of think about that as you shortlist your schools and put that together. You'll also want to take those rankings into consideration in deciding, okay, how important is brand name to me? And so for some people, if they're eventually going to return to their home country, sometimes the school name needs to carry weight when they return. And that doesn't always have to be Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. I have many clients that are from India and plan to return, in the longer term part of their career. And they do find that, schools like Darden, Cornell, Tepper, those names do carry it back home. So it doesn't have to be M7 or bust. You can definitely shortlist some other schools in the top 15 and feel comfortable about returning home, but it is something to keep in mind. Another thing would be the cost of the program, right? Like you want to know, how much am I spending and how much is it going to cost to either, take the time out of the workforce, not have a paycheck, and how long is it going to take me to repay these loans? So being able to look at that and your return on investment. And then the other part of it is really the curriculum, right? Like you want to make sure that the school has classes that make sense for you and your career goals. So looking at their specializations or concentrations, actually the top schools in sustainability, which is one of the biggest fields that's growing right now. The top programs on the Knight's list aren't even, some of them aren't even in the top 15, top 30. Some of them don't even break that. But if you're really interested in sustainability, there are amazing universities in in Europe, more around kind of like Germany and Netherlands, that are going to help you with getting to that next level in your career, being immersed in an environment that sustainability is really something that they're living and breathing, and you can actually have a career in sustainability with sustainability companies or firms or countries, if you want to be in the government side. And so, if that's what you're looking for, then sometimes that's more important than rankings. So, kind of keep that in mind as well. The other thing is looking at who's recruiting at that school. So you can look at their employment report. And I mean, it's really easy to search it, and you just put in the school name and employment report, and it typically comes up. And you can definitely take a deep dive into that and see, what are the common recruiters that are coming to campus? What sector are they recruiting for? And what kind of roles and salary. So all of that will be in the employment report for each of these schools. I would say it's easier to search the internet to find it than it is to play around with each one of the schools and find it. So just search the school name and employment report, and it typically will come up. The other thing is teaching methods. So if you're much more of an action-based learner, or somebody who wants to have hands-on projects working with real clients, then look for schools that have those types of experiences. Ross, Dart, there's so many of those schools that come to mind. Obviously, a lot of people talk about HBS and the case method. A lot of schools do follow the case method, but others have their own version, right? So Darden has their own version of their own kind of case method as well. But look at those teaching methods and figure out what's going to be best for you, for your learning style, and where you want to go next. And obviously the professors that are teaching the class, if they're well known in that specific area where you want to be, definitely a time for you to be looking at those schools. Okay, so next let's move on to class size and culture of the school. So most of these schools are going to have their own personality and persona, and admissions committees are kind of, when they're looking at an application pool, they're looking to curate a class. They want people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different locations. And so they're really looking to make sure it is a culture fit. Some schools have a much more close-knit type of community. Others have a more competitive community. And so getting to know them and understanding what it's like to be a student at that school is going to be really helpful. And a little tip right now is that you'll want to reach out to current students, ambassadors, presidents of clubs that you're specifically interested in right now, because they're going to graduate or go on to their internships in May, June. And then while you're writing your applications, you're not going to have anybody to use as a resource. So small tip for right now, if you're doing your MBA research, reach out to those students before they take their summer break or start their new job this summer. Okay, so Kumar has a question. Is there any advantage or disadvantage to apply in the January intake? Actually, no. So a cool thing about the January intake for INSEAD is that they actually have an internship opportunity or the ability to study at different campuses if you do the January start, because the way that the class works is you start in January, do coursework. Over the summer, you have a break. So you can, go back to your family business or job, or you can do an internship, or you can, study abroad. And then in the fall, you start you go through the program, and then you graduate in December. So it's a little bit of a different pace, and gives you that opportunity to get more involved and get a little bit more experience. So it can definitely be an advantage. When we talk about HEC Paris, it's a very similar curriculum from one start to the other. The other school that has a J-term start that's, in the top of the list is going to be Columbia. The J-term program for Columbia does not include an internship. So you start in January, you go throughout the summer, and you come back in the fall, and you will be graduating with the class that started in the fall before you. So it's a year and a half of curriculum, and you graduate with the class that started the fall before you. So different experiences, but depends on what you're looking for. All right, Rashida, you have questions about many experts have suggested to me to have an understanding of nuances of different colleges to exactly understand which college suits me instead of just aiming for top colleges. How can I do my research regarding this? Okay, so I have a whole document that I send people sometimes on like how to do your research. So much like what we're talking about right here, you're going to want to look at their curriculum, see what their specializations are. And then if that's a good fit, start looking at the student clubs, because that's going to ring a bell. Like if they're, and I'll keep going back to sustainability because I feel it's kind of niche and different than like consulting, finance, right? Like, so it's a good example because it's a little bit different. But with sustainability, if that's something that's really important to you, you can look at their sustainability clubs and really their net impact club, which is, a club that all universities essentially have. They do case competitions. It's an amazing network and a really cool organization. But go in and look at who the president or the contact person is for that specific club and reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm thinking about applying, or, I will be applying, and I'm very interested in sustainability. And I have a few specific questions I want to ask a current student. So if you could help me or somebody from your club, that would be fantastic. And then list out the questions, because here's the thing. We want to maximize the time that we're taking them away from their studies. We don't just want to say, hey, can you chat, and then have an aimless chat. That's not going to help you or them. So make sure you have direction in this conversation, take notes, and then you can reference it later on when you're writing your application and in your interview, because that's, again, you showing you've done this research. The other way is to kind of look at the different clubs and activities on campus. A lot of students will be doing they'll be doing different webinars with the schools. They host coffee chats. These schools really want to get to know you. And the beauty of the newer technologies is they're definitely doing a lot more online than they've done before. So they're definitely trying to connect with you virtually. Use those opportunities to get to know the students, which is who's going to really tell you about the vibe of the school. So that's how I recommend doing the research, is ambassadors or the presidents or the members of specific clubs. That's going to help you. You can also look at your network and see who you have within your network that's connected, and see what they have to say and what they have to share. Okay, so moving on from here, we obviously need to talk about cost and ROI. So looking at the top programs in the US, the tuition is going to be about $130,000 to $145,000, maybe even a little bit more. But that's also a 2-year MBA program. When we look at the EU UK programs, we're talking a little bit less. Obviously, there's a little bit of translation in there as far as cost and euros to dollars. But taking it in, typically their programs are a little less expensive than the US schools, and that's because they're typically going to be 1 to 1.5 years. And then, thinking about how you're going to pay for this. So loans are definitely the most common route. There are schools that give out merit-based scholarships, and merit-based for MBA programs can be, I would say, typically how you boost their profile. So it's either, your GMAT or GRE score definitely can play into merit-based scholarship. The background that you have and that you're bringing to the cohort, right? So if you have a unique experience or niche, that's definitely something that they'll be looking at. If you add to the diversity of the cohort, something else that they'll be looking for. And what value you bring to the cohort is how that they'll show that via scholarships. Now, I'll have candidates that come to me and they want 100% scholarship for their program. That typically doesn't happen for MBA programs. They're not funded the same way that other master's programs are, through grants and different sorts of funding through companies and et cetera. Most MBA programs are going to have scholarships that are from donors that are going to be earmarked for specific type of candidates or different caliber of candidates, or that can be spread amongst many candidates, right? So different opportunities that are available there, but they're not going to be full rides. It doesn't happen that often. Even if you get a perfect GMAT or GRE score, it does not equal getting, a full ride. Those days are gone. And so, knowing that and taking that in stride will help you with deciding on the schools, right? So if you're looking at M7, they're quite expensive. And so maybe adding some schools from the T15 can be one of those things of, should I add some schools that maybe I would get a higher scholarship for and have less of a loan? Definitely something to consider. Most schools, will also use, so like when we talk about like Harvard, Stanford, and Yale specifically, they use kind of a tool for financial need. And so it's not based on one thing or another. It's a mathematical equation for them. And so, you're not always going to increase your scholarship based on GMAT or GRE score, like I mentioned. There are plenty of other scholarships that you can pursue. Most MBA programs will post within their financial aid section some external scholarships, whether that's before you're admitted or after you're admitted, depends. But they do have some trusted scholarships. I have some posted lists that I share with my clients, so happy to share them with you. You guys are always welcome to reach out, and I'm happy to share whatever I have with you. But, there are different scholarships. If you are a female, then looking into the Forte Foundation, they have an MBA launch program that if you apply, so you need to do, the program started in January. The deadlines were in January for people that are applying for fall 24 entries. So, a year ahead of time. You got to plan a little bit ahead of time and join the MBA launch program, or you can even do their on-demand program and be able to participate in their series of presentations. You have to complete the GMAT or the GRE while you're part of the program. And afterwards, they actually give you codes for waiving the application fee for many of the schools. And with that being said, when you apply, it can definitely help boost your profile for being recognized for maybe a Forte Fellowship scholarship. Similar with the consortium. Consortium is for diversity with Americans. So if you come from an African American, Native American, or diverse background, then you can definitely be considered for consortium and going through their application process. Beyond that, there's some other programs out there, the Chevening, Fulbright, etc., that you can also look into if those apply to you. Rashitha has another question. Will the scholarships be offered post getting admitted? Is there any external process? So most of the time, MBA programs are going to award your scholarship either at the time of admission or within a couple of weeks. So most schools will do this practice because they'll tell you you have 3 to 4 weeks to accept your admissions. And then, so they want you to have the full picture. There is some room for negotiation, not very much, but sometimes it can happen. But, that scholarship is pretty much where it's going to be when you're offered it at time of admission. The schools that are a little bit different, like INSEAD has a huge portal that you can search hundreds of different scholarships that could apply to you, and you apply to those after you get admitted and be considered. Some schools will have you click a box during the application process if you want to be considered for specific scholarships as well, and they may require additional essays. Just depends on the specific school, but most of the time you're going to get your scholarship award with your admissions. All right, so again, we talked about the different companies that are going to be recruiting on campus, and this is definitely one of those ways that you're going to pay for your MBA later, and be able to, depending on where you end up working, could be one of those things of, how quickly that can happen. So these are typical employers that are recruiting on campus. And then there is a couple of different resources you can use to see what the average cost is for the school plus their starting salaries. And so this is one from Poets and Quants where they talk about what the starting or average salary was for somebody graduating from their program. So you can kind of see here, some of them do publish sign-on bonuses as well. So definitely something to take into account as you are deciding on schools. And now let's talk about some caveats, right? When we're talking about schools that you should be targeting and, making that short list. So if you look at this and you say like, oh, maybe I'm not the typical MBA candidate. So maybe over 30, over 33, I think that should really be 30, is typically a little bit outside of that typical full-time MBA program, or you have more than 10 years of work experience. It, makes the committee pause and decide if this is the right path for you, because sometimes the career cost or employment might not align with where you want to be afterwards. And in turn will hurt their employment statistics when you graduate if you don't accept a job within 3 months. That's kind of like their golden window of opportunity for them. All right, Laura, on-campus recruitment. I was under the view that it's not the norm in MBA schools, at least. So on-campus recruitment, absolutely, it happens all the time. In fact, it's one of the big things that you have to take into consideration of where you want to spend your time. You will have a career center that will be engaged with you before you even step foot on campus, and they will be kind of saying like, these are the companies coming on campus in the next couple of weeks to meet with candidates. They'll do presentations. They'll do round 1, 2, and 3 interviews on campus. So as you are navigating the everyday life of MBA with classes and projects and club meetings, you also are balancing, recruiters coming to campus to come to meet you. And so it's absolutely the biggest benefit of attending an MBA program is that the recruiters are typically coming to you, right? Like that's the glory of a full-time MBA program, is that they know that when you graduate, you have this strong foundation and knowledge of business. You may have a specialization or concentration, and they have also typically recruited from that school and had strong results. So college campus recruiting is a big part of the MBA program. It will also happen for specialized masters. Business programs are really big on making sure that companies know who they are and that they should be recruiting their candidates. So yeah, recruitment is the big part of it. Okay, so other caveats for like, should you apply to MBA programs? Making too much money. So this is where it becomes this make it or break it kind of moment. Some people are already in a role that is a post MBA role, or they're already making post MBA salary. And so a school may worry that you may have applied just to get an acceptance and say, oh, I was admitted to Harvard, but I rejected them, or I, declined to go because I just, my career was already where it needed to be. But, that does happen for some folks. And so it could be a question of like, why are you doing the MBA? And, what are you looking to get out of this? If you already have really high senior positions, it's also another moment of, why would you want to go back to an MBA and get a more, I wouldn't say entry level, because that's not where MBAs go into, but a mid-level career versus the one you're already on trajectory for to be well above post before you would even graduate from the MBA or start it. And some people, your resume not be something where they feel like they can help you with getting a job post-grad. So we'll say unemployable, but some people just, their profiles don't sit well with an MBA committee because they can't envision them getting employed after they graduate. And so that could be a concern for them. And then there are some other factors you should be worried about, like when you're looking at shortlisting. It could be, how far is your GMAT score from the average, right? Like, so they will post a range and they'll say, we accept GMAT scores, and this is on the old scale, but 580 to 770, like that's our score range. Don't take that 580 as like the permission to apply with a 600 GMAT score to Harvard. It's an exceptional profile whenever they go outside of that normal average. So, if you're exceptional, if you deem that you are, then absolutely it's worth the chance. But, if you've been an engineer for 3 years with 1 or 2 level increases, might not be able to get in with a 600 GMAT or, below average GMAT. You might need to have an above average GMAT. When you're coming from an overrepresented population or background and don't have anything special to share, that's actually where ARINGO comes in. Is a lot of the times people undervalue their experience. I have a lot of people who have had worked in a family business and they neglect to even share it during our initial conversation or even have it on their resume. And I'm like, oh, MBA programs really like candidates that have, family business experience. So, you want to be able to stand out from the crowd and tell them why you are a unique candidate and you fit within the parameters of, this is the right curriculum, this is the right kind of recruitment for me, and here are the things that I have that uniquely qualify me to be part of this program and that I'm going to share with my cohort during my experience. The other thing would be writing a poor application. You could not imagine how many times I've seen people answer the question of like, why our school, with is simply that it's a high ranked program and the reputation. That's not going to wow an admissions committee. They already know that they're well ranked. You need to tell them again why they're special, and they want to feel that way. And hopefully you feel that way about them as well, so that you can say like, this is really why I want to be here. This class, this club, this professor, this experience, location, etc. This is why I want to be here. And that's the important part of the application. So take into mind the application deadlines. There are, for September 25, round 1 is going to start around September, round 2 typically in January, round 3 in March, April. Now there's rounds in between there for specific schools. Some of them have early decision, which would actually start in August. Some of them have round 2 in November. So a lot of different things to kind of take into consideration as far as rounds. If you're applying for a January start, typically those applications will open with round 1 in March. And then when you are deciding which schools to apply to, you can decide and shortlist them by rounds and say like, okay, during round 1, I want to apply to these schools. During round 2, I want to apply to these. But no matter what, you should always have a plan of working for 3 to 5 months on your MBA applications, in addition to taking the GMAT and GRE. So, it is, if you can, an investment of time to get a high quality application submitted for these schools, but it usually yields strong results. All right. So I want to make sure that you guys are also liking this video and sharing it along the way to help us with our statistics. All right. So now we've learned a lot over the course of the past, 30 minutes. So now let's talk about, how do you shortlist the schools? So most schools, most candidates are going to apply to 4 to 7 schools for a cycle. And then you're going to categorize them in kind of reach, target, and safety. You're going to use the school class profile to be able to kind of determine which category it falls into and compare your profile to that. So looking at the average years of work experience, specializations, and then, of course, the GMAT GRE, right? And so if the school you're applying to, and again, we're going to use the old GMAT standard because that's currently what's published, and we can go along. But if your the average GMAT score is around 730, you would consider it a reach school if you maybe have a 690 or a 700. It could be a reach school depending on a couple other factors, right? If you have a 730, it can definitely be a target school. So you're right there in their range of typical, admits. I'd say even like 720 could be within range and you can make it a target, because at that point, when you're within, 10 points of their average, they can really say, you know what, 10 points is not that big of a deal when we balance it out with years of work experience or special experience, something unique that you're bringing to the table. You're within range. So you're admissible, but let's, boost the profile and share what you bring and what's special about you. And then let's say that the average GMAT score is 730 and you have a 760, then it could be a safety school. But when we're talking about 730, we're really talking about the M7, which really Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, I would almost put them as a reach for anyone, not just people who don't have the average GMAT score. Like even with a 760, Wharton can be HBS, Stanford, they can be reach schools because there are so many people that apply to those 3 top MBA programs, or even the M7 that, a high GMAT score is not going to cut it. You have to have the experience, promotion, leadership, what they're specifically looking for to, really be a strong candidate for them and stand out. So when you're putting those schools on your list, I would almost always, regardless of your GMAT score in the average, I would always put, those top 3 to 4 schools in a reach category. Then we can start, building down from there as far as, everything else lines up for maybe Kellogg, Columbia, NYU. You can start using the GMAT score as a little bit more of an indicator of whether it's a reach, target, or safety school. All right, so we have a question about imbalance in GMAT score is a threat to what extent? I've recently finished my GMAT focus and scored in the 98th percentile, but my DI score is pretty low. Is retest the only option for T15? So I would say that it depends on other factors. So your GMAT score or GRE score, executive assessment, whatever test you're taking is important. If there's one area that's off, that can be counterbalanced in other ways. So a lot of people, and so DI is a little bit different, but a lot of people will come and they'll say like, oh, my quant score isn't, as high as the average or in the higher percentiles. How do I counterbalance that? And a lot of that's going to be your curriculum or your past experience, your GPA, when in college, what your degree was in whenever you were in school. If it was a STEM hard science degree, then you're obviously going to be able to show a bit more of those quantitative skills. If it was, more of an arts or a fine arts degree, it'll be harder to show those. But if you have a long history of working in so if you have 3 or 4 years of working in finance with a high quantitative background, that's another way to balance it out. So depending on your entire profile would be, whether you need to retest or if you could, put that school on your list. So thinking about, what the entire profile brings, how can you leverage your experience? If you're like, I'm in a quantitative situation every day, all day, managing dashboards and metrics, etc., then leverage that in your application, in your essays, in your resume to be able to show them it's not just about this GMAT score or GRE score. Okay. All right, Wisdom and Partha, it looks like you guys are having a connection there. What can we do if we are from an overrepresented background with no special story? What can be done in a short time frame to improve the profile? So I would say, obviously, score is going to be imperative in that situation. Next is going to be, illustrating your career trajectory. So look at your leadership experience, your promotions. Those are things that are going to be important to the MBA program. And the next part is going to be about fit, right? Like making sure that you are showing them this is the career path. These are the classes I want to take. These are the groups I want to be part of. And your personality and their school vibe or persona fits with who you are. That's going to be the other part of it. The other factor is kind of, showing them you've done your research and you're a good fit for them. So that would be my best advice, if there's nothing special, to kind of accelerate the other parts of your application and your candidacy. Okay, TChem. For part-time MBAs, is it wise to say that your goals are to pivot careers? What are part-time MBAs looking for in candidate goal essays? Okay, so for part-time MBAs, there's less risk, right? Because you should be employed while you're in the part-time MBA program. So if you're telling them that you want to pivot, it's not as big of a risk, right? Because you need the MBA to get the expertise to be able to pivot into a new work area. And so with that being said, the MBA is imperative, right? And so you can definitely use that in your goals of saying, I want to combine my current work experience plus the curriculum of the part-time MBA program and network to be able to pivot into this new area. And that will make sense to them. It will not be something that makes them afraid of, like, will he be employed or anything like that, because it's a little bit different with a part-time program. So that's what I would share in your essays is, show them the connection of what you've done to where you want to be and fill in the gap with the MBA program, what it offers, and the network that you're going to have in the part-time program. All right. So we've talked about how to determine schools. A lot of people are going to say M7 and that's your list, right? But it's really about finding the school that's the right fit with the curriculum. Rank is not the only factor in finding the right school. It definitely is, about the career trajectory that you want to be on, where you want to be as far as location, and kind of take that all into consideration. There are some fantastic programs that are just outside the M7, outside the top 10 and top 15 that have amazing programs that will get you where you want to be. A lot of people want to go into product management, and it's a wide field, and you don't have to go to an M7 to get into product management and have a very lucrative career. UT Austin McCombs has a fantastic trajectory into tech and product management. So does Tepper, Cornell. Another amazing program is Duke Fuqua. Like these are names that can be on your list that don't have to be M7 or Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, that can be on this list and definitely help you with getting to the next step in your career. The other thing that you might want to also look at is scholarships, right? So if your profile is average for schools on your list, you may look for ones where it's above, and you may be offered higher scholarships at those schools. So it's worth considering. Maybe I throw out one or two applications to safety schools so that I can, if I were to get more of a scholarship, then I have a tough decision to make about, like, if I want to go to, this school or that school based on how much scholarship I have and how much debt, is offered, or how much is offered, to know what my debt ratio might be after the MBA. All right. So after that, really the next step is to start digging into your school list, right? So you've made this list of schools that you're going to be applying to. Most people will kind of balance out that list of, 2 to 3 reach schools, 3 or 4 target schools, and maybe 2 or 3 safety schools, right? Like it's a different balance for everyone. But now that you have that list and you feel confident about it, like these are your schools that you want to apply to. Now you need to dig in, start doing your research, networking with students, attending webinars, maybe visiting campus if that's possible, and really getting into that next part of the process. All right, so I hope that I've answered most of your questions, but if you guys have any questions, I am here to help. We'll open it up for Q&A. While we wait for questions to come in, I'll have you remember to like this post and share it on YouTube, as well as sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to tag GMAT Club and ARINGO. I will also have Abhijit post my private link for GMAT Club profile evaluations. You guys are always welcome to schedule a meeting with me for a profile evaluation, resume review, whatever. It's right here on my slide, and then Abhijit posted it for me. So please feel free to schedule a time to chat about your specific profile. Oh, thanks, Wisdom. And thanks for coming and attending the webinar. I'm really excited. All right, so we'll wait a few more minutes to see if anybody else had any other questions about school shortlisting or general questions while we're on live today. And I'll just go ahead and plug that there's so many schools having MBA fairs right now, MBA and master's fairs. So, you know, again, like if you're trying to explore these schools, you can look at different MBA fairs. I have a link as well, or you can look at, you know, ARINGO's website, and I'm sure GMAT Club has it, but different fairs that you can attend right now to get to know these schools. They have their presentations. Sometimes they might have a current student or alumni part of it. So, you know, you want to do your research. They're in these MBA fair formats right now, looking to meet students like you. So a great opportunity for you to engage with those schools. Big Nesh. So considering the current economy's session, which country would be good to pursue your master's? So great question. I mean, obviously, like things can change very quickly. I think, again, it comes down to what you're wanting to do next and where you're wanting to live. I'd also look at visa situation. So if you're wanting to go abroad, look at, you know, what they offer in the US. Typically there is, you know, the 2 years of OPT, but with the STEM extension, you get an additional 12 months. So almost all MBA programs are now offering the STEM certification, whether that's a tweaked curriculum to be able to get that STEM certification, or, you know, what else they can do to get you to that point. The UK typically has been offering a 2-year stay after you graduate from a top MBA or a top school. It doesn't necessarily have to be an MBA or a business school, but they are offering an extension of 2 years and a little less requirements than like the US of like specificity of like what you need to be doing exactly when you graduate and how it's tied to your degree. So you can definitely look into that. And then from there, it's each individual country and their visa processes. But again, like another great way to get these answers is to talk to a current student from the same country and kind of see what they have to say. You can also talk to them about the employment and recruitment on campus and make sure it's a good fit for you. All right, Tim K. Are acceptances to part-time MBAs likely possible for late 30s, early 40s? Absolutely. Part-time MBA programs are open to a wider range of years of experience, and I would say like even up to 20 years of work experience if it seems like a valid next step for you. Part-time MBAs are a little less discriminate because they're not sharing, you know, the class profile as part of rankings. Schools or business schools are ranked based on their full-time MBA profile. So everything else kind of falls in line as, you know, they can be a little bit more accepting of the range of years of work experience, less or more. And so absolutely, you're right on par as far as like part-time MBAs are concerned. There are some that are more competitive. So again, like more compelling, like when we're talking about, sorry, I'm like more focused on the US for this because these part-time programs are a little bit more prevalent. Kellogg, Booth, Haas, Duke, those are the 4 top programs that really offer like a commuting part-time experience, like a weekend MBA where it's possible to travel to a different city or state and take part in the MBA part-time program. Some schools, even like Haas and Wharton, are now exploring kind of like online MBA. Wharton's is an online MBA, executive MBA, but a lot of options kind of are starting to open up there. But yeah, absolutely. They say they will accept a wide range of years of work experience because they can. And if it makes sense for the next step, absolutely. Laura, slightly off topic, but how much can GMAT score compensate for a low undergrad GPA score, assuming rest of the profile fits the school admissions criteria? So, right, like this is a big question for a lot of people. It depends on how far off your GPA is from the average, right? Like, so if the average GPA at the school is a 3.7 and you have a 3.3, GMAT can definitely help with that. If your GMAT or your GPA is below a 3.0, it's a little bit different as far as, you know, how much you can help it with just a GMAT score. Some schools would actually ask you, and so this is per school. So, you know, definitely reach out to the schools and you can find out as well. But, you know, if you're below the 3.0 line, some of them would prefer that you actually take a class for credit at an accredited school like UCLA or UC Berkeley Extension. There's quite a few schools that actually have some online courses that you can take that will help demonstrate your academic readiness. I mean, there's definitely stories behind why GPAs are low. It doesn't always have to do with your academic capabilities. And so, you know, if there's a story behind that and you're willing to share, you don't have to go deep in depth. And this is getting more generic, Laura. It's not necessarily 100% about you, but I have a lot of questions about this. And so just sharing that, you know, if there was something that happened during your undergrad experience that kept you from being able to academically succeed, you can tell that story. You don't have to be super in depth and tell them, you know, I was in and out of the hospital. You can just say, due to a medical condition, I was unable to attend some of my classes, and with lack of advising, I wasn't able to, you know, make the grades that I wanted to. I've learned from this and will be asking for help in the future if this were to arise again. And I'm looking to help improve my academic candidacy. You know, what is the best way to do that? And so they can help you with deciding that and navigating it. And then you'll also use that in the optional essay in your application to share that experience of, you know, explain a little bit about why the GPA may be a little bit lower. Again, like super excited to, you know, chat offline. If you have questions specifically, I'm happy to answer those offline. You can email me or you can book a time on my calendar. All right. So I think that we're done for today. Again, I really enjoyed having you guys here. Lots of great questions and excited for what happens next with fall 25 applications. If you have any questions, I'm here to help. Beyond that, I wish you the best of luck, and don't forget to like and share this presentation if it was helpful for you. All right, and have a great day.